They left her in the snow with a scrap of paper pinned to her coat that read, "No one's child." By morning, the cold would have erased her breath. Until a rancher with frozen hands and a broken heart stopped his horse and said the words that would change everything. "You're mine now." The wind screamed across the high plains like it was angry at the world. Miles of white stretched in every direction, the snow swallowing fences, roads, and tracks as if no one had ever lived there at all. Night was coming fast, dragging a brutal cold behind it, the kind of cold that didn't just chill you, it erased you. And in the middle of that empty whiteness, a small bundle lay half buried beside a fence post. No cry, no movement. Just a child. Jonah Reed reined his horse hard, boots scraping ice as he swung down. He'd almost ridden past. Almost. Another mile and he would have been home, fire lit, coffee boiling. But something, call it instinct, call it guilt, had pulled his eyes to the fence line. He knelt, heart pounding, and brushed snow from a tiny coat stiff with frost. A girl. Maybe 6 years old, too thin, too still. Jonah tore his gloves off and pressed his ear to her chest. For one terrible second, he heard nothing. Then barely there it was. A heartbeat. Weak fatting. "Lord," he breathed, ripping open his coat and pulling her against him. Her skin was ice. Her lips were blue. Someone had wrapped her carefully, too carefully, like they knew exactly what they were doing when they left her here. Pinned to her coat was a note. Jonah peeled it free with shaking fingers. "No one's child, don't look for us." His jaw clenched so hard it ached. "Well," he muttered, voice breaking as he cradled her tighter, "that's a lie." He lifted her onto his horse, wrapped her in his coat, and turned toward home. The wind howled louder, but Jonah leaned forward, whispering into her hair. "Hold on, I got you." The girl didn't wake until morning. Jonah had spent the night packing by the fire, feeding her warm broth by the spoonful, rubbing her hands until his arms burned. He hadn't slept. He didn't dare. When her lashes finally fluttered, he froze like a spooked deer. She stared at him, eyes huge and dark, panic flashing instantly. "No," she whispered, trying to scramble back, weak arms flailing. "Please, I'll be good." Jonah raised both hands slowly. "Easy, you're safe." She shook her head, tears spilling. They said I wasn't wanted." Something sharp split open in Jonah's chest. He sat on the floor, putting himself lower than her. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Leela." "That's a good name," he said gently. "I'm Jonah." She stared at the fire, then whispered, "Are you taking me back?" Jonah swallowed hard. "No." Her head snapped up. "No one's taking you anywhere," he said, voice steady even though his hands trembled. "Not today, not ever." She didn't believe him. He could see it. Hope was something life had beaten out of her already. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the crumpled note, and fed it into the fire. The paper curled and vanished. "You see that?" he said softly. "That lie gone." She watched the flames like she was afraid they'd spit it back out. "Leela," Jonah said, choosing his words carefully, "I don't know who left you, but I do know this: no child deserves to freeze alone." Her voice was barely a breath. "Then what am I?" Jonah met her eyes. "You're mine now." People talked. They always did. A lone rancher with a dead wife and no children suddenly shows up in town with a half-frozen girl. Folks whispered. Sheriff asked questions. Church ladies frowned. Jonah didn't care. He built Leela a bed beside the stove, bought her boots 2 sizes too big so she'd grow into them, sat with her through the night when nightmares stole her breath. She barely spoke at first, flinched at raised voices, hoarded food like the world might vanish again. Once, when Jonah snapped a board in half fixing the fence, she hid under the table, shaking. Jonah set the board down slowly and crouched. The trouble didn't come loud. It never did. It arrived the way rot does, quiet, patient, pretending not to exist until the damage was already deep. Jonah noticed it first in Leela's sleep. She'd been with him nearly 4 months when the nightmares changed. At first they were simple, cold darkness being left behind. She'd wake crying, clutching his shirt, and Jonah would rock her until dawn painted the walls pink. But now she screamed names. Not Jonah's. Not anyone he knew. She thrashed like she was being dragged, begging someone not to make her get in the wagon. One night she woke gasping, nails digging into his arm hard enough to draw blood. "They're coming," she sobbed. "They said they'd come back if I talked." Jonah's stomach turned to ice. "Who?" he asked softly. She shook her head violently. "I can't say, they'll hear." That was when Jonah knew this wasn't over. The letter came 2 days later. No return address, no stamp hand-delivered. Jonah found it nailed to the barn door, like a warning. The child was not abandoned. She was left where she belonged. "Return what isn't yours, or things will be taken." Jonah read it twice. Then he folded it carefully, tucked it into his pocket, and finished feeding the horses like his world wasn't cracking open. But his hands shook. That night after Leela fell asleep, Jonah sat alone at the table, lamp low, staring at the flame. He'd buried one family already. He wasn't about to lose another. Not without a fight. The town knew before he said a word. They always did. Whispers followed him into the feed store. Conversations died when he walked past. Sheriff Hale didn't meet his eyes. Only one person spoke plain. Martha Klein, the midwife. She cornered Jonah outside the church, hands on her hips. "You've got someone powerful angry." Jonah nodded. "I figured." "She wasn't just left," Martha said quietly. "That child was hidden, and someone's afraid she remembers something." Jonah thought of Leela's screams, the wagon, the name she wouldn't say. "What do I do?" he asked. Martha studied him. "You protect her, same as you've been doing, and you make sure the truth has nowhere left to hide." The men came at night. 3 of them. Jonah heard the horses before the knock, soft hooves, trained not to announce themselves. He blew out the lamp, lifted the rifle from its hooks, and moved like he'd learned years ago, back when survival was something soldiers did, not ranchers. Leela was awake already. She sat up in bed, eyes wide but dry. "It's them." Jonah crouched beside her. "You stay here, don't make a sound." She grabbed his sleeve. "Don't go." "I'm not leaving," he said firmly. "I'm standing." The knock came again, polite, almost respectful. Jonah opened the door with the rifle resting easy in his hands. A man stepped forward, well-dressed for the frontier. Clean boots, cold smile. "Evening, Mr. Reed," he said. "We're here to collect what belongs to our employer." Jonah didn't raise his voice. "You're standing on my land." The man glanced at the rifle. No need for trouble. Jonah smiled thinly. "Funny, I was thinking the same." Behind the man, one of the riders shifted. His hand moved. Jonah didn't miss it. The shot split the night. Jonah aimed low, clean, intentional. The man went down screaming, clutching his leg. Horses reared, someone cursed. "Next one won't be," Jonah said calmly. They dragged their wounded friend away, fear finally overtaking confidence. When the sound faded, Jonah stood shaking, breath loud in his ears. Leela was behind him. He turned, heart in his throat. "I told you to." She wrapped her arms around his waist and held on like the world might end if she let go. "You didn't give me back," she whispered. Jonah rested his chin on her head, eyes burning. "Never," he said, "not to anyone." The truth came in pieces. Children remember differently, not like adults, not in neat lines. Over weeks Leela talked, sometimes with words, sometimes with drawings scratched in the dirt. A man with a scarred hand, a wagon by the river, a woman crying, papers, fire. One night she said it clearly, voice small but steady. They killed my mama because she saw them take the money. Jonah closed his eyes. The people who'd taken her in weren't relatives. They were cleaners, people who made problems disappear. Leela had seen too much. They meant to kill her too. Leaving her in the snow was mercy, by their measure. The trial never happened. The evidence Jonah and Martha gathered, statements, ledgers, the scarred man caught trying to flee was enough. Quiet arrests, quiet removals. The town exhaled like it had been holding its breath for years. No one said thank you. They didn't have to. Spring came soft. Leela grew inches and confidence. She learned to ride, to read, to laugh without checking over her shoulder. One evening, Jonah found her standing at the fence, watching the sun sink low. "Do you ever wish you didn't stop?" she asked. Jonah joined her. "Every good thing in my life came from stopping when I didn't plan to." She nodded, thinking like someone older than her years. After a moment, she slipped her hand into his. "You won't leave me, will you?" Jonah squeezed gently. "I'm right where I belong." She smiled, slow, certain. So did he. Because sometimes family doesn't come from blood or names or papers. Sometimes it comes from a man who stops his horse in the snow. And a child who was never no one's. Just waiting to be claimed.